So we are up to over here 44B2. 44B2. So we're a little behind. We're a half and a quarter behind, and we'll try to make a little dent today. Okay, we're on 44B2 in the left-hand column, the second paragraph. Aivu v'Chizkiya b'nei Barate derav. Aivu and Chizkiya, the sons of Rav's daughter. Aisu Aravu l'kame derav. They brought their Aravas, their branches of the willow, to Rav to see if for him to use in fulfilling his obligation.
Where are you right now?
On 44B2. 44B2 in the left paragraph. The second paragraph on the left column. Do you got it? Okay, Jerry, I hope you got it. Aivu v'Chizkiya b'nei Barate derav. The Aivu and Chizkiya, the sons of the daughter of Rav, Aisu Arav l'kame derav, brought their Arava to Rav. He waved it around, but it didn't make a blessing. From here you learn that the Arava obligation in the provinces is only a custom of the province. So what are we talking about? This is a Gemara from yesterday. Remember, besides the little bit, do I have an extra? They have it. I think they have in the front. No, one second. Good morning. Give me 1 second to
I do. How you been doing? That's right. I'm Jeff Clark. With the K. From San Francisco. How you been doing? Did you come down from the north? Wonderful.
Where did he disappear to?
He went to get someone a yarmulke.
Okay.
So how's everything been doing? Okay?
Thank God. To be with a grandchild for 2 months, I'd have to tell you.
Here he's back. Hold on.
Okay, we're back. We'll talk later.
We're back. Sorry about that. Now we're on the bench with a Boca Jewish Center. There you go. Okay. So, to remind everybody, we all know about the 4 species, the Daled Mina, the Lulav, the Esrig, the Hadas, the Myrtle, and the Harova, the Willow, which come together. Separate from that, at the time of the Beis Hamikdash, there was something called the Arova procession, where they took these huge willows and either they stacked them up around the Mizbeach, around the tabernacle, or the Kohanim actually took them and marched around. That is similar, if you all remember, what we do every day on Sukkot is Hashanah. Does everybody remember that after Hallel, right? After Musaf, what do? After Hallel, we take it and we march around the bima once. That's in remembrance of what happened back then. So this is what they're talking about over here. So this minhag, this tradition, was argued, is it simply a tradition? Or no, it's in fact not so much a tradition, it's actually from the times of the prophets, a law, an halacha, that you have to do. If it was a law, you would have to make a blessing on it. If it's only a tradition, you don't make the blessing on it. Simple. So you can see from here that he did not make the blessing on it. Does that make any sense to everybody? Very good. So over here, since he didn't make a blessing on it, kasava minig neviim, he held it's only the minig of the neviim. That's it. Amar Aidu, ha kamina kamei de Rabbi Elazar ben Tzadok, Also, Lakame Ahu Gabra Amalei. And I was standing by Elazar ben Tzaddik, and a certain man came before him, said like this: Kurasicha Isli, I own villages. Kuramaya Isli, I own vineyards. Zaisi Isli, I own trees. V'asu b'nei Kiriu Makisha b'Karmei. And in the Shemitah year, the sabbatical year, which is coming up now, the inhabitants of the village came on their own to hoe the vineyards. And how did they get paid? They ate from the olive tree. But I didn't tell them to do any of this. They just did this on their own. Arich or lo yarich? Is this proper or not proper? Amalei, Rabbi Elazar, that's Rabbi Gibbon just wanted to say. By the way, Rabbi Gibbon, did you notice last year when a certain rabbi was unavailable due to Corona, and we had a Shana Rabbah, I won't be here this year, I sort of instituted the minhag of blowing. If you did the Daf Yomi, you said, and the Olam liked it, loved it. I just thought I'd mention it. Okay, there you go. Halavai. So, Jerry, if you're here for Hoshana Rabbah, try to get the rabbi to continue our minhag from last year of blowing the shofar. It was very nice. It was great. Jerry down for the Amid, and I blew the shofar. It was great. It was great. Anyway, so.
Well, because you wanted to run back and forth, and I stopped you.
Right. But it worked beautifully. So I think we should do it again. Even if I'm not here, we should do it again anyway.
You look very good. You should start playing golf now.
I'm halfway there. Gewaldig. I look younger, I got to admit. Anyway, so he says, what happened over here? So, like, was this proper or not proper? Because obviously, we all know that in the sabbatical year, the Shemitah year, you're not allowed to do any hoeing, etc. So, Amalei, loy arich, it's improper. He didn't say it's usur. Why? Because the reality is, since he didn't tell them to do it, there was no isim in Torah. But he said, still, it doesn't look right. That is known as maris ayin. To the eye, it doesn't look right. If it doesn't look right, even though technically it's okay, don't do it. So look what the guy did. Unbelievable. The man left him and went on his way. In other words, he didn't ask him, so what should I do to correct the problem? The man immediately ran home to stop the people from hoeing his land and from taking the zaysim as payment. They're taking from the olive tree as payment. That was the first thing he did. He wanted to stop people from doing the wrong thing. So Omar, Elazar ben Tzaddik said, I've lived in this land for 40 years. I've never seen a man go and had the path of righteousness like this man. Because he didn't even wait to get the answer. So what should I do? He quickly ran home just to see what he called, what is it? I stopped them from doing what they shouldn't be doing. Then he came back. Hadar. Then after he stopped everybody from working and all that, he came to Elazar ben Tzaddik, what should I do? How shall I proceed? Afka, making hefka, abandoned all your olives to the poor. The same pre kushe karamim, and give prutas from your own pocket for the hoeing of the vineyards. Because here the pruta is a small thing. And clearly, Rabbi Elazar seems to be saying that it's okay to pay people to hoe your vineyards even on Shemitah year. So obviously, we're going to have to discuss this. The Gemara takes a note of the fact that Rabbi Elazar ben Tzaddik rules that you're allowed to hoe your vineyard on the Shemitah because he said you could pay them prutas, small amounts. Jeff, you making sense so far? Yeah. If you got any questions, ask. Because it's not simple Gemara. Because Kuyim Yishari, but is hoeing permissible in the Shemitah? Yeah, that. But Tanya, we learned the Shavi is Tishmit Teno Uni Tashto, and on the 7th year you shall leave it and forsake it. Not just leave it alone, forsake it. Tishmano Milakashkesh. We're now on 44b3. That means refraining from hoeing the land. V'nishtana meaning milisakel. And forsaking means even clearing, not even from clearing it with rocks. So if that's the case, right, you're not allowed to do it. How could you go ahead? How could Rabbi Elazar to some extent pay them a little prutus to continue hoeing the vineyards? There are two types of hoeing. One is covering up cracks in the roots so they should not dry out. And one is for piercing of the ground to make it soft, in order to plow up the ground to make it soft and loose. Also, the second thing, piercing the ground, plowing it up to make the ground soft. That's also because it's going to improve the trees. Satume pile shari, to cover over the cracks. That's merely making sure that the tree doesn't die. That's not improving the thing. That's just protecting the roots. That you're allowed to do. A person should not walk more than 3 parseis on Friday to arrive at it, because he might arrive at his destination with not enough time to prepare his food for Shabbos. This is only when one is traveling to his home, where his family is not expecting him. He's going to surprise his family. They may not have prepared food for him. This is, by the way, Ushpizin in the Sukka, right? We have Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, Aaron, David, or Shlomo, right? All come to, we call them the Ushpizin, the visitors. This is where it's coming from. But in the case, good morning, Daddy. But in the case of one traveling to a hotel, even if he has to travel more than 3 parseis, he can rely upon that the food that he had with him. Then okay, says the Gemara, Ve'ikad the Amri, Amar Rav Kahana, we're on 44b3. Okay, parshas is about what you can walk in about 18 miles. Or a part, well, not really. A parsha, they say, is a measure equivalent to 4 or 8,000 amas, between 2.2 and 3 miles. The amount of time it takes to walk one parsha is 72 minutes. So since the average person is capable of walking 10 parseis in a day, the 3 parseis measure is practically 1/3 of a day. This is number 29. If you look on the bottom, number 29, the second paragraph. The second paragraph of 29, the big one. 44p3, right on the bottom. Yeah, we're on the bottom. Okay? You see, they're just giving a second. Jeffrey is just reading the things about the thing. The idea being is 1/3 of a day. If you really want to cut it down, it's 1/3 of a day. But this is the reason why, Jeff, we make it our business that we don't fly after Chatzos on a Friday. Because just in case, you never know what happens. And this is really what this, that's what this is saying. And the only question here is, in our case, we're used to having food like this. In a day and age where food had to be prepared, that was the question. If they weren't expecting you at home, they didn't have food prepared for you. But if you were going to a hotel or an inn, you brought along food, so you always had enough food for Shabbos. But now we have Ikadiyami Amarav Kana, just the opposite. The ruling is even if you're going to your own house. But certainly if you're going to an inn, how do you know there's going to be food at the inn? Okay? Amarav Kahana, Bididei, Aviuvda. There was such an accident that happened with me. Bafilu Kosa Daharsna Loy Ashkechin. I didn't even find a Kasa Daharsna to eat, which was a small amount of food. A dish like herrings. Herrings. Look at number 33 on the bottom. This is a dish made of small fish fried in their own oils and flour. Herring or sardines. Probably even better, sardines. Right? I couldn't even find sardines, which goes to show that Jews have been eating sardines and herrings, right, on Shabbos since time immemorial. Back to the Gemara. Mitzvahs lulav ketzah. You see, you thought it was only today that we eat this stuff. The first time, why do we eat chulent? Everybody's because you have to have a hot thing. But we all know what did Yaakov Avinu serve Esav? Chulent, a lentil soup. What was he serving him? Lentils. What is that? Cholent. So Jews, before there was chili and before there was anything else, there was cholent. That's it. It goes all the way back. Mitzvah lulav ketzad. The mitzvah of lulav when the first day of Sukkot falls out on Shabbos. How do we handle the lulav? And the Mishnah said that on Erev Shabbos they would bring their lulavim, and the attendants would arrange the lulavim upon the benches of the Temple Mount. Inside on the Temple Mount, there was stadium seating, one within each other. So 2 rows, one within each other, of stadium seating on the Temple Mount to see things, what was going on in the base of Mikdash. So Tani Kameder of Nachman, a teacher of Mishnahs and Baraisus came before Rav Nachman, said, the attendants arranged the lulavim upon the roof of a bench. So each bench, in other words, everybody, was going around in a semicircle, like stadium seats, but they all had overhangs. Okay, so it was raining, whatever the reason to keep the sun out, right? Amalei, so Rav Nachman said to him, we're now on yesterday's daf, 45A1. But do we want the lulavim to get dried out? If you put them on top of the overhang, the sun is beating down directly on the lulavim. If you do that, what's going to happen? It's going to dry up. So Ella Ema Al Gava Itzabot. It means upon the bench itself, which is covered by the awning on top of the bench. And Amarav Rachel, Amarav Yehuda, Hara Bayis, Totov Kobel Oil. The Temple Mount had surrounded a double row of benches. Sotov Lifnimi Sotov, 1 row within the other row of benches. In other words, stadium-like benching. If you go to Yankee Stadium, that's what it was. There you go. So, very good. We now get to the next Mishnah. We're all on the same place. So again, we talked about this Arava situation. Once again, Jeff, Jerry, Danny, what is the Arava ceremony? Besides your regular carrying of the 4 minim, they either took huge 10 amas high willows, 11 amas high willows that overhung the Mizbeach, which was 10 amas high, and they stacked it up around it, almost like we do on Shavuos, right, where we surround the bima with flowers and whatever it is. Or they took the willows and they marched around. It was forgotten what was done. It was forgotten what was done with the destruction. Things got forgotten. Like we said yesterday, in the Holocaust, how many things were forgotten. And that's it. So they weren't 100% sure. So, but that's what they did. They got these huge willows, and either they marched around the Mizbeach, or they stacked it up against the Mizbeach, the tabernacle. So, Mitzvahs Arava Ketzad. How was it done? There was a place below Yerushalayim, the Nikra Moitza, and it was called Moitza. They would go to the Shalicha Bezdin, the agents of the Bezdin would go down. And they would gather from there the branches of the Arava. Okay, they would gather from there the branches of the Arava. Obviously, this was done on the weekday. Very important. It was done on weekday. They couldn't cut it on Shabbos. And the Kohanim would come and stand them up on the side of the Mizbeach, right? And their tips were bending over the tops of the Mizbeach. So now there's 2 ways of learning this. They either stacked it up around the Mizbeach, and the tips, since they were 11 amas high, leaned over the top of the Mizbeach, or no, they actually marched around the Mizbeach, but in marching, their tips, as they marched, they made sure they were leaning over the Mizbeach as they were marching. Tiku ve'eriu v'tiku. The Kohanim would then blow the tekiah blast, the Teruah blast, and the tekiah blast on the trumpet, and this is where Jerry, the minhag of blowing the shofar, by Hashanah. On Hashanah Rabbah, the Hasidim go, and now BJC, because I instituted the minhag last year, right, blow shofar after every one of the 7 times that they went around the bima. Remember last year, Jeff? I don't know if you were here. We went, on Shana Rabbah, we go around 7 times. You see from over here, now most in Ashkenaz, they just go, they say what they have to say and go around 7 times. The Chassidim have to every round blow the shofar. Tekiah, Shivarim, Teruah, Tekiah. And that's because this Mishnah says that's what they did. Right there. Tekiah, B'Yiril, Tekiah. Right there. The Kahanim blew a Tekiah blast, a Trua blast, and a Tekiah blast. Beautiful. On each of the first 6 days of Sukkot, they would circle the Mizbeach, the altar, 1 time, and they would say, and we today do the same thing. We circle the Bima 1 time with the Lulav and Etzika, that's Rabbah. And we said, Ana Hashem, they said, Ana Hashem, Shiana, Ana Hashem, Atzlichana, please Hashem, save us, please Hashem, make us successful. Rabbi Yehuda says, Ani B'hai Shiana. Ani B'hai, which is a combination of Hashem's names, brings salvation now. And we actually use this formulation on Hoshana Rabbah. But on that day, on the 7th day, on Hoshana Rabbah, on the 7th day of Sukkot, okay, we're on now 45A2, they would circle the altar 7 times. And what do we do today? We circle the bima 7 times. At the ceremony, at the departure of the 7th, on the 7th day, what did they say? Yoifi l'cham mizbeach, yoifi l'cham mizbeach. To you this beauty mizbeach, to you this beauty, O altar. Rabbi Eliezer said, l'ko u'l'cham mizbeach, l'ko u'l'cham mizbeach. To our God and to you, O altar, to God and to you, O altar. This the Gemara is going to jump on because we do not have shutvis. We do not have a partnership with God. God is Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, the one and only. But by using these words, L'ka u'l'cha mizbeach, it looks like I'm attaching importance to the mizbeach, very similar to the Chas v'Shalom, to the Catholics, right, that have what he called shutfis, a partnership with God, right? The Holy Ghost. And then we're going to get to that in Shas in later on. If I say this famous Taisvitsin over there, whether shutfis is a problem or not a problem, and it's a whole. We pass it at the end. It is it avodah zarah? Is it not avodah zarah? Whether it's machlokes, avut, shmuel, whatever. We're not going to get into it now. It's a much larger conversation, which we will wait about 5 years until we get to it. So, kemaseyu b'chol kach maseyu b'Shabbos. Just like the ceremony is performed on the weekdays, so it's performed on the Shabbos. We're talking about when the 7th day, Hoshana Rabbah, falls out on Shabbos, then they would go around 7 times. Okay? Except they would gather the branches on Friday and place them in gold barrels filled with water, so they shouldn't wilt overnight. Rabbi Yochanan they would bring palm branches and beat them on the ground at the side of the Mizbeach. They're up to show. I'm going to say it. Oh, okay. So just call me as soon as they get to. I'll be there. I just have to run inside to the show for this for a minute, okay? To blow. And they beat them on the side of the Mizbeach, which of course. They have somebody to blow. Okay. Yeah. And they beat the ground at the side of the Mizbeach. Okay, they beat the ground at the side of the Mizbeach, which is similar to our beating the Hoishanis on the floor. Remember, we have a bundle of willows, and we bang it. But it's a minig rishonim. We're going to talk about it. And they called that day the beating of the branches. Miyad, on that seventh day after the finishing of the mitzvah of Lulav and Esrig, Miyad tinoikid shaimtines lugayim, the adults would grab the children's lulavim from their hands, ba'oiklan esrigayim, and would eat the children's esrigs. Okay, because the Yom Tov was over. And of course, the Gemara is going to talk all about this. About we're going to have to get to the Gemara. It's very hard to understand.
You try to eat it next week.
All right, so obviously,
cooking it in. It's a whole process.
I know, to make it edible. Anyways, Tana, they learn Mokain Koil Niya Hava. This place of which was called Meitzah, where they gathered the Arabas from, right? Was a place called Meitzah, meaning tax-free, because it was exempt from the king's tax. So why did he call it Meitzah, which is found? I did the makeup Bekarga de Malka, since it was exempt from the king's tax, Karile Meitzah, which means exception. Meitzah means an exception. This was an exception to the rule that you always have to pay tax.
This was in
duty-free shop. Exactly. And they would stand them up on the sides of the Mizbeach. Tana, rabbis v'arukais. The Aravas were many and long. The Gebayis achad asa amma. They were cut to stand 11 amas high, so they can lean over the altar, which was 10 amas. By an amma, they can lean over the altar.
You put it on the...
Okay, wait. Well, we didn't get to that yet. Hold on. So we go. From here we learn that on the base of the altar is where they placed it. In other words, everybody, the altar was like this. Here's the ground. Then there was a little platform, another platform, another, and up. So it was like this. They made a Here's the ground. One amma platform. Then it cut in an amma, and they put another amma, and went up 5 ammas. Goes like this, and everything. So we're saying, where did they put these willows? They didn't put them directly on the ground. They actually put them. They put them on the one amma platform. Okay. The Isa because if you would think they put it on the ground, we have a problem. A Mishnah says, the Mishnah is in Midos, the side of the altar extends 1 amma and inward 1 amma. Zeu Yisai, that's in space. Okay, so 1 amma up, 1 amma up. Give me a second. This with the shape to finish. There we go. Okay, 1 amma up and 1 amma side. That's the base. The next piece. It then goes up 5 ammas and went inwards an amma, making another. That was not called the base. That was called the saivev. This was called the ledge. This precision was the ledge. Allah shalish. It then went up 3 more ammas until the roof of the altar. That's where the horns were. You know, the 4 corners, right? The karnais hamizbech, the corners of the mizbech, the horns of the mizbech. So now, if the Arabas were placed on the ground, how is it possible for them to be leaning over the top of the altar by an amma without actually touching the mizbeach? They weren't allowed to touch the mizbeach because you're not allowed to have outside things placed on top of the mizbeach, the altar, right? El shmamino. I said manelach. It means they placed it on the base, which means that in reality it therefore rose 2 ammas above the mizbeach, and therefore was able to lean over without actually touching the mizbeach. Shmamino. Very good. We've got proof. Very nice. Now we're on 45A4. Amar Rabavu. Micro, what is the pasuk? Where do we know about this? That the Arabas have to rise above the Mizbeach. Shenema, and we say this all the time. Isur chaga oiba voisim al karnes hamizbeach. Circle the altar on the festival with Arabas branches that reach to the horns of the altar. So we see they have to reach the horns of the altar. It must mean that they have to rise above. Since the horns rise above the roof of the altar, it must do that. The rubbish must to reach above its roof. Fine. Whoever takes the lulav in its binding, the hadas ba'abasayin hadas with its plating. That means it's a perfect hadas. Three myrtles, the three myrtles like this. One this way, one that way, one this way, looking like a crown. The pasuk compares him to somebody who has built an altar and brought a carbon on top of it. Shenemar, we're now on Amid Beis 45b1. 45b1. Jeff, we are on the next page. Okay, 45. Yeah.
So I guess what I'm curious is these are all oral laws coming down. Right. So Moses was teaching this to the people in the desert.
Yes, he was.
Before there was ever anything like this going on.
Correct.
Were they trying to, I mean, imagine this? Or?
Yeah, so I'm going to tell you how all of it was. The carbon Pesach, the Pesach sacrifice, was not brought the entire time they were in the Midbar, right? The first year was brought, second year was brought, and that was it. Then it was brought later on. Tefillin, right? We all put on tefillin. Right. You ever notice what it says? It says, Shartam liyoisayadecha. Right, tie a sign onto your arms, and letaitafais between your eyes. And we say, oh, that's tefillin. It doesn't give you any details whatsoever. You should write on the mezuzahs. What's mezuzah? Mezuzah means the doorpost. Where do you see you have to do anything? You shall have tzitzis. What is tzitzis? Where does it say it's 8 strings? Where does it say it's 5 knots? So every single mitzvah by definition, you could actually, if you look at it, you realize it must have come along with an oral translation. Here's the other one, example. You shall honor your father and your mother. What's honor? How do you honor them? There's another commandment that said you shall fear your mother and your father. What's fear? What's the difference between honor and fear? They're 2 different commandments. You shall keep the Shabbos. Don't do any work. The Torah doesn't tell us what no work you're not supposed to do. We learned it out because the whole thing of Shabbos is next to the building of the tabernacle, that whatever you work was needed for the tabernacle is not allowed to do on the Sabbath. But we learned that out. There isn't a thing that's in the Torah that obviously had to come with a Torah Shabbat Peh.
We're looking at this, looking back.
Correct.
But they were looking at it going forward before it had ever even
Moses.
Right.
Moses.
And he was teaching.
there. And then things got, and then when he died, it was such a shock to the system. That 3,000 laws got forgotten. Listen, guys, I'm just going to go back. I want to get my yarmulke before it disappears. I'll be right back.
I don't know if I'm getting across what it's how they...
In the midbar, by the mission, they didn't do it.
Right.
Because they didn't have pound.
Because they were living there, right? I mean, they were in the desert and they had their sukkas and they were...
Right. This was done later when the Beis Hamikdash was built. So the Nevi'im, the prophets at that time instituted this thing because based on Aloha Moshe Messina, the way Moshe explained it, but it didn't come into effect until much later.
Okay, so the answer is Yes, much was learned, much was forgotten, much had to be remembered. And even all of this, they're not sure what happened. They were there. Their grandparents were there by the Beis Hamikdash, but it got forgotten in the destruction. That's what happens. That stuff happens. Let's keep going over here. Okay? So, because it says, bind the festival, the lulav, with the adasim, its blood into the horns of the altar. Its blood, where does blood come to this? The answer is by doing the lulav esrog and adasim. The mitzvah, it's like you brought a carbon. Amar Rabbi Yomi Mishum Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Rabbi Shimon HaMechayzi Mishum Rabbi Yochanan HaMechayzi. Whoever joins the yontif with eating and drinking, in other words, it's misameach, is joyful. Amala all of akosaki the bottom is bech ve'ikar love carbon. It's the pasuk looks at him as if he built an altar and offered an offering on it. Join the festival with fattened beasts to the horns of the altar again. Al kanis hamizbech. What does eating have to do with the kanis hamizbech? The answer is, if you're joyful, it's like you brought a carbon on the mizbech. Kol mitzvahs kulon, all mitzvahs. Ein adam yaitzi boy ela derech gedi lasan. A person cannot fulfill them except in the manner in which they grow. Okay, such as Rashi says, such as the erection of the beams and pillars in the tabernacle, and to take the lulav adasim and the arabas. Shenema atze shitim oimdim, that you must stand them in the way that they grow. You have to stand. We learn it out there. What again? We learn it from there to all of the mitzvahs. That the proper way of doing it is the way that it grows. This is similar to that if you have a nice pastrami, right, and you need to cut it, you got to cut it with the grain. Exactly. Tanya nami hochi. Atze shitim oimdim, shoimdim dergedulasa. Davaracha, or another learning, oimdim shemamidim as tzipuyon. The beams support their gold plating. In other words, the beams of the Mishkan were then plated with gold. So the beams have to be strong enough to hold up the plating. Davarach, we're on 45b2. Oimdim, Shema Taima Ovad Sidram Ubotal Sikuyon. People, you will say that the tabernacle has fallen into disuse and the beams have been hidden away because we have not had the tabernacle. Let's be honest, everybody, for forever, right? For about 2,500 years, we haven't had the tabernacle. So then we're going to say their promise is gone and their hope, right? Never to be returned. It's ruined. Talmud Loima Atse Shitem Oimdim. They're standing. It's just waiting for Mashiach to make its appearance again. It didn't disappear. But it's hidden. If you all remember Indiana Jones and the Lost Ark, remember the Ark is hidden in some vast shipping center in a box, and there it is. No, Daddy, remember the movie? It was hidden away. They did the best place. They put it into a warehouse with thousands and thousands of wooden crates, and they just added it in there. You can't hide it. You can't hide it anymore. You know, Jeff remember. Jeff remember. Through my merit, I'm able to exempt the entire world from judgment due in the world to come. For the sins which were committed from the day I was born until now. And if my son Elazar was with me, Rav Shimon Bar Yochai's son was Elazar, we would be able to forgive the entire world from the averis that were done from the day the world was created until now. Yosam ben Uzziah, Imani, if Yosam the son of Uzziah, a king of Yehuda, was with us. We were able to deal with all the Averis committed from the day the world was created until the last day of the world. I have seen the people of the highest level who receive some sort of Ruach HaKodesh, divine presence, and they are very few. Im Elef, if there's 1,000, Hein ani uveni mehen, I and my son are among them. So said Reb Shimon bar Yochai and Elazar. Im meyahem ani uveni mehen, if there are 100, I and my son are among them. Im shnayim, if there's only 2, ani uveni, then it's me and my son are the 2. As I said, Reb Shimon bar Yochai and his son Elazar. Are there so few of an individual at the highest level? There are 18,000 rows of righteous ones standing before the Holy One, blessed be his name. Shnema, surrounding our 18,000. So we see there's more than 1,000 of exalted, there's at least 18,000. 45b3. Like Kasha, Hodimis, Takle, Be'aspak, Lario, Ho'amira. Reb Shimon bar Yochai was talking about those who see the divine presence through a clear screen. Rabba's statement of 18,000 are those who don't see, they see it only through an opaque screen. They see it through a shaded screen. And there's so few that see through a clear screen. But Abaye says, like focus there are no less than 36 righteous people. The Lamed Vav Tzadikim, the famous Lamed Vav Tzadikim, the 36 righteous people who receive the continents of the divine presence upon who the world is standing. Praiseworthy are all who await him. Loi, the word Lamed Vav, is big gematria, equals in numerical value to Tolosum B'Shita Hava, to 36. So you see that every day there's 36 righteous visits. Not every day, in fact.
Every generation.
Every day. The whole yoim, the Gemara says. Like Pasach, Alma, Mitlosim, Beshita, Tzadikin, and Mekabi, Apishkino, the whole yoim. The whole yoim. And every day there must be 36 great people every day. Right? So at least, at the very least, there's 36 people in every generation or every day that have to be holding up the world. Like Kasha, Hoda, Ma'ale, Bebar. Those are those who enter. Daddy, right here. We know one. We just don't know the other 35. See, he protests. What do they say? They protest too much. They protest too much. Like Asha, there are those who may enter only with permission. Reb Shimon bar Yochai says those who can enter without permission. Moshe Rabbeinu was able to enter without permission. The truth of the matter is, Reb Shimon bar Yochai and his son could have entered without permission, but since nobody enters the way Moshe Rabbeinu enters, that's the point. What is the whole point of this Gemara? Simply to state that a tzaddik is responsible for his generation. And this is very important to understand. We're all responsible individually for ourselves. But when somebody is made the leader of men, he represents those people that he leads. So if the people that he leads go down the righteous path, it is because he is leading them down that righteous path. So therefore, and if they leads them down the wrong path, he's responsible for leading them down the wrong path.
That's where you get this, the saying, the buck stops there.
That's the truth.
So who is better? Someone that's
by design starts out and says, I want to be a tzaddik, I want to do the right, I want to do the learn, I do all these things. Or the person that doesn't do that at all, but just naturally is that way.
Okay.
He doesn't.
The person has to work on it. Nobody becomes naturally.
No, what he's trying to say, if somebody has more of a personality that leans to it, the answer is.
Moshe Rabbeinu had a very bad.
Moshe Rabbeinu is the perfect example. The Tiferes Yisrael brings a remarkable story that the king of Ethiopia heard about Moses, and he sent his painter into the desert to paint him. And the Tiferes Yisrael brings us back, and he said, it brings us down. He said, the painter came back to the king of Ethiopia. The king of Ethiopia looked at the picture and says, what are you talking about? That's the face of a murderer. Look at the anger in that face. He said, I'm telling you, that's him. So the king of Ethiopia picked himself up and went into the desert. And lo and behold, it was Moshe Taka. And Moshe told the king of Ethiopia, you should know that I have a terrible anger management problem. I am an angry person. He said, but every day I wake up and say, but today I'm not going to get angry. I work at it. And it's a struggle. It's a struggle. That was Moshe. To answer your question, nobody is born. Nobody can't eat it.
Everybody has to work on themselves.
To quote Rabbi Sachs, Judaism is, nobody's born great. Greatness is thrusted on all of us. The Torah lays on us greatness. And now we have to live up to that greatness that's been applied to us. And how we do it, each one of us with our own personality, from our own background, how we do it is each of us brings something else to the table. But that's how it is. So, of course, it's the work. Everybody has their thing they have to carry. Everybody. I'm going to stop at exactly 10 o'clock, not a minute later. I'm only trying to get us onto today's stuff if I can, right? Today's involved, right? At the moment of their departure, what did they say? The Tanakh said, right? To you, the beauty of Mizbech, to you, the beauty of Mizbech. And Rabbi Loza said, to Hashem and to you, the altar, to Hashem and to you. Now, the Gemara says, he's peering the heavenly name with the Mizbeach. V'tanya call him anybody who peers the name of the heavenly name together with something else is uprooted from the world. Shenema, because it says, Bilti LaHashem Levadeh, only to Hashem alone. What's going on here? In other words, don't be Catholic. You might not want to say those words, or maybe it did, and the census took it out. Hachikama. To Hashem we emit 45 before, and to you the altar we give praise. To God we emit, and to you we sing praise. So in other words, we're admitting that we're only serving God, and it's to his altar that we're praising. The Mishnah said in the ceremony that was done on the weekdays, it's done on Shabbos, they would beat palm branches on the floor, and they would call this day the beating of the branches. Where did he get this idea? Dixiv, kapos, branches, shnayim, two. That's a lashon rabbin. What do you call it? It's plural. Achaz l'lulav, achaz l'mizbeach, one for the lulav and one for the altar. But Rabbanan Amri, who do not have this, that you have to bang lulav branches on the side, Amri Rabbanan Amri, kapos kisiv. It's written without a vav. It's written, you're right. It's pronounced plural, but it's written singular, and we go after the way it's written, which means it's only for the lulav. Rebbe Levi Oimer, Ketomar. The purpose of bringing the date palm branches is to underline the fact that the Jewish people are like a date palm. It only has one heart. The sap of the palm is only in the trunk. It's not in the leaves or the branches. So to Klal Yisrael only has one heart devoted to their Father in heaven. Upon one says a bracha al netilas lulav, I'm taking the lulav all 7 days of the festival. Uvisukkah, but the bracha of leishe basukkah yoim echad. You only do it on the first time that you sit in the sukkah. My tama lulav de mitzakti leilis miyam. In the case of lulav, where the night separated from the day, the mitzvah of lulav cannot be performed at night. So each day is an individual, mutually exclusive mitzvah. Kol yoima mitzvah bi'apinapshu. And so therefore each day gets its own blessing. Sukka deloy mafski laila miyamim. Sukka which continues night and day. You get to sit in the sukkah nighttime and daytime, right? Kula shiva. It's like one long yontiv. The chad yoima arichadam 45b5. It's like one long continuous day. Okay? So therefore, how many brachas did you make? Only one. The first bracha that you make when you walk leisha b'sukkah. And now I'm sitting in the sukkah for all 7 days. There's no break in the action. Right. And now, no, we don't do that this way today. But this is how they worked it out. Sukkah shiva. One says the bracha of leisha b'sukkah all 7 days of the sukkah. The lulav yaimecha, but in fact, lulav you make the bracha on the tilas lulav, the taking of the lulav, only on the first day. The lakata lachem beyom arishon on the first day. That's it once and that's it. My tama sukkah diaraisa shiva. Being in the sukkah all 7 days is biblical by nature, so it should get a blessing. Lulav dirabanim sagilei b'chad yoima. Lulav, which the rest of the days from day 2 to day 7 is only rabbinical in nature, not biblical in nature. So only on the biblical do you make a blessing and not on the rabbinical, right? No, whether the mitzvah of sukkah that you sit in 7 days, whether the mitzvah of lulav that you take the first day biblically and the other days rabbinically, you go ahead and you make a blessing, because even on rabbinical mitzvahs, on rabbinical commandments, we make a blessing. And that's, of course, what we do today. Amar Rav Yosef, Nokoi the Rabbi Bar Chana b'yodav. Take the opinion of Rabbi Bar Chana in your hand. The Kula Amoyre Kame Kabose b'Sukkah, because all of them agreed with Rabbi Yochanan that you make a blessing on Sukkah. You make a blessing on Sukkah. You make the blessing on Sukkah. This is where we're going to stop.